The movie starts with a Chinese girl named Wei, who is drawing a flower she saw in her father's diary. Her dad explains that it's called a corpse flower, which smells bad to attract flies. We also see that both Wei and her dad have the same strange scar on their faces, something that seems to run in the family. Wei's father, who is a scientist, says he is working on a cure that will heal their scars. Later, he prepares a special serum and injects it into a piece of animal skin. He then places the skin on his scar, and it starts to heal right away. Excited, he believes his experiment is successful. But soon the skin grows out of control and begins to cover his whole face. Struggling to breathe, he cuts it off with a scalpel, but the skin keeps coming back. Terrified, Wei tries to save him by stabbing the skin, but sadly he dies. Years go by, and Wei is now a teenager. She loves science and has earned a scholarship to a famous college in New Zealand. When she arrives there, her Aunt Ling comes to pick her up. Happy to see her niece again, Aunt Ling offers her a place to stay. On the way home, Aunt Ling shares that her husband left her, so she now lives only with her daughter Angela. When Wei meets Angela, she immediately notices how beautiful her cousin is. Aunt Ling also mentions that Angela has forgotten her Chinese roots and can't even speak the language, hoping Wei will set a good example for her. Once settled in, Wei creates a small shrine for her late father and offers him local New Zealand food. The next day, Wei heads to her first day of college. Lost, she asks a homeless man named John, whose face is badly scarred, for directions to the science building. He kindly helps her. Later, Wei attends a lecture by Dr. Paul, one of the professors. She sits quietly in the back, while Angela sits up front with her close friends, Eve and Jasmine. Paul hands back the test papers and announces that only Wei scored a perfect 100%, which amazes everyone. He also says he is looking for a lab assistant and invites students to volunteer. Later, Wei goes to the science lab and takes out her father's old notebook to study. At that moment, Paul walks in and notices it, asking about the Chinese writing. Wei shyly explains that it belonged to her father and that she is trying to finish his work. Impressed, Paul tells her she has potential and offers her the position of his lab assistant. He promises that if she does well, he will even let her join in on the experiments. Wei happily agrees. Meanwhile, Angela brings her friends home, and they make fun of Wei's shrine. The girls are creeped out when they see her father's scar in a photo, and Angela mentions that Wei has the same scar, which is why she always wears a scarf. Curious, they snoop in her room and find pictures of cut-up animals and insects. Disturbed, the girls quickly leave. They later watch a movie in the living room, and when Wei returns, she tries to join them. But the three feel uneasy around her and soon walk away, leaving her alone. Elsewhere, Paul gets an email from the research committee saying his funding will be canceled unless he makes a big breakthrough within 2 weeks. The next day after class, Wei sees Angela and her friends hanging out. Feeling jealous, she nervously approaches them and invites them to try her father's favorite Chinese food. They agree but aren't too excited. During the meal, Angela looks uncomfortable and refuses to eat. Wei eats chicken fingers with her bare hands, which disgusts the others. Angela and Eve walk off without touching the food. Jasmine tries a little but soon leaves too. On her way home, Wei talks with John, the scarred homeless man, and shows him her own scars. She says her mom believed their family might have done something bad in the past, which is why she looks ugly. But John gently tells her she's beautiful. Later, Paul offers Wei a ride home. He says he wants to focus on her research, and if they work together, they can achieve something incredible. Excited, Wei returns home and shares the news with her father's photo. Just then, she hears noises from Angela's room. Peeking inside, she finds her cousin having fun with her boyfriend, Josh. Angela's dog notices Wei spying through the door and starts barking loudly. Angela realizes her cousin is watching and angrily tells her to stay away from her, both at home and at college. She also complains that she doesn't want her house smelling like incense or rotten food. This deeply upsets Wei. The next morning, Wei and Paul continue studying her father's formula and figure out that something is missing, a binding agent that can connect skin tissues together. They run many experiments to find the right ingredient, but every single attempt fails. Days pass with no progress, and Paul grows more and more frustrated. He begins to take out his anger on Wei. One day, Jasmine walks into the lab and asks Paul if he still needs an assistant. To Wei's shock, Paul says yes and hands Jasmine a paper to sign. Afterward, the two girls walk home together and Jasmine apologizes. She explains that she wasn't trying to steal Wei's position and admits she knows how hard it is to fit in. She suggests they support each other, which makes Wei feel a little better. But then Wei notices a brochure about corpse flowers, which reminds her of her father's research. That evening, determined to succeed, Wei sneaks into an exhibition of a rare corpse flower and secretly collects some of its fluid. She brings it back to the lab and uses it as the missing binding agent in the formula. Meanwhile, in another room, it's revealed that Paul is secretly having an affair with Eve. Their time together is interrupted when they hear noises in the lab. Paul walks in and is surprised to see Wei working there. At that moment, Wei cuts a piece of skin from her thigh and replaces it with animal skin treated with the new formula. To her joy, the wound heals perfectly, proving the experiment works. Excited, she shows Paul her thigh and explains the success. However, Eve misunderstands what she sees and quickly snaps a picture. She then interrupts, pulling Wei away and insisting it's time for girls' night. After Wei leaves, Paul notices that she forgot her father's notebook. Curious, he calls a friend for help in translating the Chinese notes. Soon after, Eve sends the photo to Angela, who becomes furious and rushes home to confront her cousin. At the same time, Eve takes Wei to a remote spot and warns her not to sleep with teachers in exchange for grades. Wei insists nothing like that happened, but Eve doesn't believe her. Eve abandons Wei in the middle of nowhere, leaving her to walk for hours until she finally makes it back home. But waiting for her is an enraged Angela. Wei is horrified to see that her shrine has been destroyed, and she panics, saying their ancestors will curse them. Angela doesn't care and immediately attacks her cousin, trying to choke her to death. In self-defense, Wei grabs a chopstick and stabs Angela, killing her. Shocked by what she has done, she tries to revive her cousin, but it's useless. In despair, Wei drags Angela's body into the bathroom and forms a twisted plan. She removes the chopstick, slices her own face, then cuts a layer of skin from Angela's face. Injecting it with a special formula, she places the skin on herself. After a painful transformation, Wei is now Angela, and even her scar is gone. Moments later, Aunt Ling comes home. Wei pretends to be Angela, and her aunt, completely fooled, hugs her without realizing her real daughter's body is hidden under the bed. Later, Wei studies Angela's videos to learn her mannerisms. Aunt Ling interrupts to say she'll be away for a week on a work trip, apologizing for always being busy. The next day, Wei goes to college as Angela. For the first time, everyone pays attention to her, and she hangs out with Eve and Jasmine, who don't suspect a thing. After class, Josh picks her up and takes her on a picnic in the woods. Wei feels overjoyed because she's never had a boyfriend before. But suddenly, Angela's skin peels off her face and lands on Josh. Horrified, he stumbles back and accidentally falls off a cliff to his death. Terrified by what happened, Wei searches the house for her father's notebook but can't find it. She soon realizes Paul has it. Paul, meanwhile, studies the diary, researches Wei's father, and discovers the truth about the corpse flower being the missing ingredient. Wei reattaches Angela's face with the last of the formula, but she's worried as her supply runs low. At the same time, Paul visits the corpse flower exhibition, but finds that the flowers have already decayed. Wei sneaks into the lab to find her notebook, but comes up empty-handed. She calls Paul again, but he insists the notebook is gone and tells her the research belongs to him as the lead scientist. Furious, Wei steals some supplies from the lab before storming off. The next day, Wei, still disguised as Angela, goes shopping with Eve. Later, Eve stays over at her place, but notices a terrible smell. Wei brushes it off, saying it's just from Angela's strange belongings. As the evening goes on, Eve grows uneasy when she notices that Angela's skin looks odd and begins to peel. She tries to leave, but Wei insists she has a surprise for her upstairs. Suddenly, Wei attacks. Terrified, Eve flees and hides in a pond outside. She ducks underwater to avoid being caught, but Wei hunts her down and brutally kills her with a drilling machine. Wei then drags Eve's body inside, cuts off her face, and replaces her own. The next day, Wei has fully transformed into Eve, even dyeing her hair blonde to complete the disguise. Two police officers suddenly show up at the house, asking for Angela. Wei calmly tells them that she isn't home. The cops still take a quick look around but don't see anything suspicious, so they leave. The next day at college, Jasmine tells Wei that Angela hasn't been answering her calls and also mentions that Josh was found dead. Wei then notices police officers nearby, clearly searching for Angela. That night, Wei chops up the dead bodies, stuffs the pieces into plastic bags, and dumps them in the pond. She also creates a fake online account and sends the school a message accusing Paul of sleeping with a student, attaching the photo she had with him as proof. The following day, Paul is fired, his career and reputation completely destroyed. Wei later visits his house, hoping to recover the notebook, but Paul angrily sends her away. Soon after, Paul is seen experimenting with the formula. He applies it to 2 pieces of skin, and they merge perfectly. Overjoyed, he records a voice message for Eve, saying the experiment finally worked and inviting her over to celebrate. Not long after, Wei sneaks into his house and watches him open a secret compartment inside the liquor cabinet. Paul takes out some drugs and goes into another room to mix drinks. While he's gone, Wei quickly checks the compartment and finds a vial of the finished formula. She steals it, but as she leaves, her fake skin starts peeling off. To cover it up, she pretends to have a headache and rushes away. Later, Paul discovers the vial missing and realizes the Eve who visited earlier was actually Wei in disguise. Meanwhile, Wei returns home and painfully rips Eve's skin from her own face. Just then, Jasmine arrives. She notices Wei's bruised face and the fact that she's wearing Eve's dress. Concerned, Jasmine comforts her and invites her to stay over. Wei agrees, but when Jasmine opens the refrigerator, she is horrified to find severed body parts inside. Before she can react, Wei suffocates her to death. Wei is filled with regret, especially since Jasmine was the only person who ever treated her kindly. Soon after, Paul arrives at the house and finds Wei sitting in the dark. She bitterly tells him she can't believe he figured out the formula. Paul arrogantly replies that while she and her father spent their lives chasing the answer, it only took him one afternoon. Wei screams that it was her father's work, but Paul doesn't care. He declares that he will go down in history. He then demands to know where the vial is. Wei calmly says it's in the fridge. When Paul wakes up later, he realizes he's strapped to a table with his neck brutally cut open. Wei shoves a piece of raw flesh into the wound and injects it with the formula. He screams in agony, and a nearby neighbor hears him. The serum takes effect immediately, causing his skin to grow uncontrollably, just like what happened to Wei's father. Flesh quickly covers his mouth and nose, so Wei sticks a straw into his mouth, forcing him to stay alive while he suffocates slowly. The elderly neighbor enters the house and is horrified by the sight. She runs away, screaming to call the police. Realizing she has been discovered, Wei hurriedly grabs her belongings, takes the vial, and flees. She runs through the streets in a panic, but the police spot her and give chase. Desperate, she makes it into the subway tunnels, where she runs into John, the homeless man. Wei begs him to hide her under his blanket, but in the chaos, she accidentally crushes the vial. The formula spills onto both of their bodies, causing their skin to merge together in a horrifying way. Their flesh fuses into one monstrous figure with twisted limbs and overlapping faces. The scene cuts forward. News reports reveal that Wei is still missing and wanted for multiple murders. The bodies of Angela, Eve, and Jasmine have been found. While Paul barely survives in the hospital, scarred and broken, Aunt Ling is shown grieving her daughter's death. One day, she thinks she spots Wei on the street and calls out, but it's only a stranger. Then, she notices a horrific figure watching from nearby. Terrified, Aunt Ling runs away as the camera reveals the grotesque fusion of Wei and John, covered in scars, with misplaced mouths, teeth, and fingers. The film ends with this disturbing sight. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Love you all.